Okay, so I wanted to do a follow-up video to the first video I did on the very poor masking job that they did on a bunch of the RAV4 photos, evidence photos. I wanted to do a follow-up for a few reasons. One of the reasons was because that video, the time frame that I had to sit down to do the video throughout my day, was a little bit smaller of a time frame than I would have liked, and once the video was over, I did feel like I rushed at least the explanation of what exactly a mask is in Photoshop to at least help anybody that doesn't have that doesn't use Photoshop or doesn't know what a mask is in Photoshop, to help anybody understand what that is before I went and of course um, showed the photographs and what I see in the photograph. So since I felt that I rushed that a little bit, that's one reason why I wanted to do a follow-up. And two, the second reason is because there's actually another photo of the RAV4 of in the evidence photos that, to me, just like that other photo of the RAV4 in that, I guess, wooden crate with the concrete floor or whatever it is that the uh, that they wanted to pass off on where they put it. Um, there's another photo that to me clearly shows that it has been photoshopped, that it has been tampered. Um, those two photos, to me, there's other photos where I say, okay, I think this, but I can understand where it can be disputed this way. But then there's this photo and this other photo where there are things in it where I say, in my opinion, my feelings are, this has been tampered with. This is a photoshopped mask, and this part of the photo is a very poor Photoshop job. And I'm going to explain both of those to you right now. I'm going to show you, I'm going to do a little recap of the other photo in that weird wooden crate, but then I'm also going to show you the second photo with the clear, poor masking job that they did. So to get started, I wanted to again just kind of give a little quick overview of what exactly a mask is in Photoshop. And as you can see here in Photoshop, I wanted to start with the most simplest form, and I have a black, what we call layer. It's basically just the black painting. I painted the layer black. In Photoshop, we use layers. A lot of times we can get to lots and lots and lots of layers in Photoshop, but the Photoshop basically works when it comes to being able to move layers around, and that's how you can manipulate things and put things on top of each other and do text and graphics and masking and things like that. So to show you what masking is in at least what I think it is a simple form, here I have on top a black layer on top of this design. Okay, I can add a mask to it, which is essentially saying, with this white mask, I want to see the layer that the mask is on. I want to see all the black. That's what it's essentially is saying. If I invert the mask, which I essentially make it a black mask, I'm saying, hey, I don't want to see that layer yet. So what I mean by that is, I'm going to grab a paintbrush, and I'm just going to start painting what we call painting, but I'm basically going to use a particular color, and I'm going to start moving it around, clicking and dragging and moving it around, and you can start to see the layer underneath show up. That's what we mean by masking. I'm saying to Photoshop right now, I've got this black layer, but I do not want to see this part right here, and I'm masking that away. I'm masking the black layer, the black layer away, and I am showing through the bottom layer. I can reverse the color, and I can paint back the black layer. So that's essentially what masking does. Part of it. I can, like I said before, inverse the mask, and I can, now I don't see any of that black layer, and I can paint the black layer back in. See, so that is what I think the basic form, or at least explanation of what masking is. I'm saying to Photoshop, hey, with this particular layer that I might have selected, I want to see it in this spot, but I don't want to see it in this spot. It gets much, I would say, more complicated than that when it comes to the different like blending layers and things like that. See what I mean? But at its most basic sense, it is just saying to Photoshop, I want to see this layer, or I don't want to see this layer in actual specific spots on the page versus just I don't want to see it, I do want to see it, I don't want to see it, I do want to see it. It's more than that. Another thing to keep in mind when it comes to layers is right now you can see that I'm painting with a solid brush. You see I have a circle brush, and when I click it makes a circle, but there's also harshnesses of that edge that you can kind of take away, and when you click again you get a very soft circle, or you get a very soft edge. Here's a hard edge or a very soft edge, and of course you can see that I've got different sizes. So that's essentially I guess my quick way of, the basic way of explaining what a mask is. The example that I used before in the other video, I explained what a mask was by showing you how I can take a picture, say like this sidewalk, a picture that I just grabbed online, these two pictures I just took off of line, but I can easily come in here, and I'm just going to do like I did before, a rush job. So there we go, and then I'm gonna just add a layer to it, and essentially I told Photoshop by adding that layer, you can see over here the black, I don't want to see the rest of the photograph, I just want to see this person. I can say, you know what, oh, this person had a shadow, so let me zoom in and see if I can just bring some of that shadow back. There we go, see. And I'm basically saying, hey Photoshop, I'd like to see this part of the picture that's on top. That's masking. I can say I want some of the shadow, but I don't want some of that concrete. I just want to see if I can just get some of that shadow in there. So that's essentially masking when it comes to Photoshop. I can take something from a picture and make it look like it's in another photograph. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more to masking, and obviously I'd have to get closer to the edges. I'd have to get to here between her legs. I'd have to really make it believable. There's a good example of masking, even if you've ever seen the movie JFK, or at least something that people don't quite think about it. The movie JFK with Kevin Costner, they had showed how they maybe the picture of Oswald, the shadow was going one way, and the background the shadow was going the other way. That is a common masking mistake because people will do composites, and the shadows on people's faces will be different than the shadows in the background, and things like that. So there's a lot to look for when it comes to masking, or at least trying to get it to look like there was, say, somebody else in another photograph or things like that. But at the basic form, it is basically just saying to Photoshop, this is where I want to see of this layer and where I don't. But there's a second type of masking that you're going to see in one of the RAV4 photographs, and that's just the ability to take something and just cover it up. So for example, I have got this photograph here that I found online of just some pictures on the wall, and I've got this, say that in this picture, this frame right here, and somebody just wanted to take it out, so they only had these two pictures. I can come over here and just grab the paintbrush and just choose the color that's right next to that part of the wall. So I'm literally basically like dipping, if you want to think of it, dipping paint into that exact color and just paint over top of where that was. I didn't erase it. All I did was take this color basically I took a color and I painted over top of it. You can see there's a good representation. Let me put another color underneath so you can see. See, that's all I did was just take a color and paint over top of it, and now it looks like that's not there, but it really is. That's also another type of masking in Photoshop. So it's basically like you see up here, where you can take somebody from one photograph and put them in another photograph, or you can take something from one and move it over and put it into another one. You can do it that way, or you can just take or basically cover something up. This was literally just a splotch of color that I used to cover this up, but I chose the exact color of the wall, so it looked like it just disappeared. This is a photograph one of our newborn photographs, and I'm just going to sit here and let you look at it for a moment, and then I'm going to ask you if you could tell that this was multiple photographs that I composited together to make this one photograph of the newborn. This other picture that I have over here of one of the gymnastics portraits that we do, and I blurred the face out of this gymnast so you can't really tell, but in this one I had created the gymnast, the shadow on the ground, and the background, because when we showed up to take the pictures, the background just didn't work where we were, so I took the portraits and then I photoshopped the person into a background and I added the shadow. So those are just examples of masking. Hopefully, while I go into the RAV4 photos, you have a better explanation of at least what masking is. Now, here is now that you've got a better explanation, here's the photograph of the RAV4 again. So just real quick, I'm going to brighten it up just a little bit so you can see. Now this is what I'm talking about when it comes to this spot right here. This spot right here, and this spot right here, and this spot right here, and this spot right here. That is, to me, clearly a poor masking job. This was a softer brush that they used because you can see the softer edges. You can see that obviously, like this one right here, there wouldn't be a shadow here, there wouldn't be a shadow here, and this is clearly not the color of the concrete behind it. And it's the same color up here, same over here, and same over here, and same over here. There's wood back here, but there's no wood back here, so it's not like it's part of the wood, the different textures of this wood. It is clearly a poor masking job. They used a soft brush, because generally you would always use a soft brush. It wouldn't be believable if it was 100% hardness, and they masked around the RAV4 wherever it was, and just give you an example. They masked around wherever it was, and you can see that how this edge of what I just made, the soft edge, resembles this soft edge from those two guys right there. This guy and this guy and this guy and this guy. So those are clear signs of poor masking job. And of course, just like the picture I said in the JFK movie with Kevin Costner, and the shadow under Oswald's neck was going the opposite direction than the shadow in the background, and that's how they thought that it was a fake. Well, in this picture, after they had masked it in there, they wanted to recreate a shadow, so of course they came over here and recreated these just terrible shadows, because they literally mimicked the shape of the side view mirrors right here. and they are just terrible shadows. Why are they terrible shadows? Because even if the flash was, you know, a big bright flash coming in that direction, there is nothing. The wall is too far behind these mirrors to have a shadow that close to the mirror, defining the exact shape of the mirror with literally that hard of an edge for it to fall on. There's not, the wall is too far back for us to see the shadow right there. It would have to go back all the whole length of the vehicle, and it wouldn't. And even over here, there's a wall behind it, but the shadow is the exact same shape as the shadow over here. There's nothing for this to fall on. There's a wall over to the left, but it's a little bit further back and to the left, but still they're the exact same shape as each other, and that just wouldn't happen. That was terrible. I'm a little surprised they did something that stupid. Missing masking lines like this, I wouldn't say that it's stupid. Anybody that does compositing would say that we've all done that. I know I have in portraits that I've done, but this is just a stupid mistake. This guy, these two right there. So that's the one, and then of course this shadow down here, which, like I said, to me is too uniform. It would have a different shape, you know, as basically this part of the tire right here. This part of the tire right here is of course closer to the camera in the flash than this part of the tire right here, which is of course closer to the camera in the flash as this part of the concrete right down there, and so on over here. And when it comes to flash, the further that light has to travel, the dimmer that it would get. But this solid line literally stays constant throughout the entire length of the RAV4. Even though this part of the RAV4 is closer to the camera, which means more that light has more power when it hits here than when it hits here, and then of course the floor is the furthest from where that light is going to hit, and it's still the same solid black shadow. So for those reasons, this photo has been tampered with. The last photo is this guy. Now this photo is of the back of the RAV4. If you look at this black bottom that they poorly want to pass off as, I'm guessing, maybe just a dark area of the photo or something like that, but I can clearly see that it is basically just a poor masking job where they put this guy down here, and from what I think the reason is to cover up what was underneath it, either where the RAV4 was, maybe because whatever's under there, the ground that we would be able to see is too distinguishing something, but there's something with this back that they didn't want us to see, and they tried to cover it up with this black line. I've got these photos that I grabbed from online of the back of what the back of a RAV4 looks like. There's one. You can see that when this door swings open, you can see underneath it there's the muffler, or there's the part of the muffler, the part of the exhaust system. You can see there's another photograph that I found of a RAV4 online. You can see this, there's the body line that they were mimicking. Let's take this guy and drop him over here so you can see better. See? There's this body line that they were mimicking, so you can see that right down here, this body line curves up here, and you can see the bumper, or not the bumper, the exhaust system. Here's the tailpipe over here. Here's the exhaust system, and then of course you can see the ground underneath it. So in this photo, even if they were taking the photograph at night, you can obviously see that they were using a flash. And when it comes to the flash in photography, you can see the highlights from where the light hit, and then down here where it would fall off because of the edge of the rear of the car, the light would still continue to travel, and it would hit something, whatever's below this. As the light has to travel a bit further, it gets reduced in power, but it still would illuminate down there. The RAV4 is only a few feet off the ground, so if you're getting all these highlights right here, and this, you can clearly see that they use a flash, it will have lost power as it was, you know, moving, and went past this edge of the RAV4 and hit down here, which would be the part of the exhaust system, as you can see right there. There you go, part of the exhaust you can see right there. If I was standing here and I took a flash, aiming the camera at this part of the RAV4, the flash would illuminate this part of the car right here. Of course, as like you saw, this is where essentially the camera is aimed at in that other photograph. See, and the light would pass this guy, and you can see right here is the exhaust system. So that guy should be probably about here somewhere. Let's see. The exhaust shows up. Here's this edge. There's this screw hole. So between the two, we can see that they screw that part of the car on, the molding. So if we come back to this photograph, you can see here's, you know, this guy and the screw hole. So the exhaust probably starts somewhere around here and goes this way, and then over here you would see the ground, and the tailpipe is over here. But if I take this photo and we brighten it up, you can see nothing shows up. I'm brightening the photo to the point where all of this detail gets completely blown out. You should be able to see some detail down here. You should be able to see, like I said in this photo, in this part, you should be able to see where the exhaust is. You would be able to see even details on the ground. If it's dark, if it was outside, you'd see grass. If it was inside, you'd see the concrete. You'd be able to see the tailpipe, the exhaust. The muffler is not that far down from right there. Okay, it is not that far down, as you can see in this photograph. I saved this video of a guy walking around the RAV4 that they were trying to sell. See how close this is? See how close this is, and how close it is to the ground? But they're going to try to say that in this photo over here, this is so dark that they needed to. It was so dark that they needed to use a flash to take this photograph. The flash clearly lit up this whole area, putting even this hard shadow right here. That guy. But when you try to take this guy, I'll just brighten it up a little bit. When you take this guy and you brighten up the picture, not a single bit of detail shows through here. The muffler, which is right there, inches away, doesn't show through, and that is it just wouldn't happen. There's enough light coming from that flash that even though flash loses power as it travels, it would have only traveled a few more inches below this body line right here, and hit the muffler, the tailpipe over on the left, and even a little bit on the ground below it. And being able to just brighten up the photo, there's no reason why we shouldn't see any detail. And then the last thing is, if you remember the other photographs that I talked about where I can cover up the picture by just painting, you can see the poor masking job right there. This poor masking job right here, where this line comes down here, it gets, you know, rocky right there. It comes up and goes over the metal, the sheet metal of the RAV4. But then of course now you start to see this highlight, and then the shine from the flash highlighting the bend in the sheet metal, of course, shows up the rest of the way. So here's where the sheet metal starts to bend, and of course the poor masking job goes up a bit, so you can see that right there, and then comes down, and then you can see how it just gets just shaky, like they just did a poor masking, or a rough job masking and trying to mimic whatever was ever there, or whatever reflection, because this part of the car is still painted also. You can see, if you remember before, I said that they have hard lines and soft lines. You can see over here they use more of a hard line to do that. But this, just like the other photograph, is clearly just terrible masking jobs that they tried to pass off. With this one, the reason why I would think that they would put it here is because, of course, they just wanted you to think that this is where the RAV4 was or is stored, and of course didn't want us to see where this RAV4 was, which means that it was basically in a place that it shouldn't be, between the salvage yard and the crime lab, and then maybe storage wherever between the crime lab and storage later. And the same with this photo over here. They didn't want us to see what was down here and what would be down there that is either something wrong with the RAV4 that can be distinguishable in other photos, or I also feel that it could be the concrete and it was distinguishable enough to say, hey, that's not this place. It's one of those two things, or both. There was maybe damage down there that if we look at another photograph, we'd be able to say, hey, that damage is not there, and it's already in the crime lab, so how come there's damage here, or something along those lines. But it's clearly a poor masking job, just like this one is clearly a poor masking job. And I just wanted to put that out there, start some discussion on it, and see what people think. If there's anybody else that has Photoshop experience, or any experience in anything like this, of course, comment and let me know. And I'm looking forward to everything, all of this just being cleared up within, hopefully so many months. And thank you for bearing with me through this explanation, and that I took a little bit longer, and watching the whole video. And I'm going to be doing one more video on another, what I think not a poor masking job, but a poor Photoshop job on another part of the RAV4. It's not quite a masking mistake, so that's why I'm going to do a separate video on it soon. But until then, thanks a lot.